What's up, everybody? This is Aurora from Fat Chunks, and I'm here to show you my Fenrir guide. This guide will be in multiple parts, and I'll be releasing them weekly. Expect to see 2 to 3 videos every week about new supports. Today, we'll be going over matchups for Fenrir. Alright, so here's Fenrir. Let's go over his abilities really quick so everybody's familiar with them. His first ability is Unchained. It's a jumping ability which allows him to jump onto somebody, and if he has 5 stacks of his passive, Unbound Runes, it stuns. Then his 2, we don't really care about much as support, just gives life steal. It's very good late game for support actually. It lets you duel people. But Fenrir's early game is what we're going to be looking at mostly. Brutalize is very strong ability. It has pretty bad scaling, but its base damage is insane. And then Ragnarok, his ultimate, allows you to pick people up, drag them wherever you want them, and it's very, very strong. Alright, now that you know his abilities, we'll start going over matchups. I'm going to go through every role. So we'll start out with the Assassin because it's on top, and we'll go straight down all the way through all the roles. I'm just going to go god by god. Fenrir's matchup against Arachne is not that good because of her cocoon ability and her venomous bite. She has too much the same for Fenrir to kill her, and also you can get stunned out of your brutalize. Baka, he's pretty good against Bakasura because if he uses his jump to get away, which is takedown, and then you jump on top of him and brutalize, he has no way to get away from you, and his Butcher Blades is not going to be able to outduel your brutalize unless he has lifesteal. In early to mid game, he probably won't have lifesteal. Same thing goes with Basta as Baka. If she jumps or pounces away from you, and you jump on her while this is on cooldown and then brutalize, you're probably going to kill her. Unless she has some sort of armor like a shifter shield or something, but she's not going to have that early to mid game. She's probably going to build a Jotuns first after her boots. So with just Jotuns, you could probably kill her. Right, Humbats. Same thing with Baka and Bastet. If Humbats jumps, you jump on him, brutalize him, kill him. He can ult you off himself, but if he's burning his ult just to get you off him, that's a huge thing for your team. Kali's kind of tricky because of her incense, which is a stun. It's a circle, and when she uses it, it stuns everybody around her. So if she stuns you while you're brutalizing, it cancels it. So it's kind of hard to get damage off on Kali. But if she jumps onto one of your teammates and then stuns them, and then you jump onto her and start brutalizing, you could do a lot of damage and potentially get her to pop her ultimate. But if this is mid-game and she has her kin size already, doesn't really matter because she's going to start ripping through everybody anyways. Loki's interesting because his Vanish resets your Brutalize. It doesn't reset it, but it cancels it actually, so that's interesting for Fenrir to say the least. I feel like he's pretty strong against Loki. If he opens onto somebody, you jump and then brutalize, you're gonna kill Loki. Same thing with Bastet, Baka, and Humbats. It's pretty much like his jump. You just have to wait for the Vanish to be down. And for most of the assassins, when you're trying to kill them as Fenrir, you just have to be patient to use your brutalize on them until after they used their jump or their escape. For instance, Vanish for Loki. Alright. Fenrir is very strong against Mercury. One of the reasons I started playing him was because Mercury was really popular back in the warrior meta. More towards the end of it because of how strong he was. And Fenrir just does great against this guy because on his special delivery, he follows him and he can't really trade with Fenrir, even in the late game, until he has lifesteal. Because if you're support, you're going to be building armor, so he's not going to be able to kill you, and you're just going to be able to jump on him and kill him. Neja is interesting. In lane, she's probably going to out-trade you just because of her damage with her ring toss and her sash. She doesn't have a jump, but she could stun you out of your brutalize. So it's very interesting to see a duel between Fenrir and Asia. It's really who outplays harder will win the fight in the early to mid game. Fenrir's really good against Nemesis because she has a double dash and you follow her on both the dashes when you're brutalizing, and she also has a shield. So if you see her shield and you jump on her shield and stun her out, she loses the shield, and then she'll probably try to dash away from you after the stun ends, and you brutalize and you just follow her, and she's pretty much dead. Fenrir isn't good against Circuit, but who is? This god's completely broken, very strong in this current build. That might change in the future. Hopefully. High res. Alright. Thanatos. As you saw in my game against Dig in week 1, Fenrir does very well against Thanatos. You can dodge his ult easily, and he has no jump, so he's very easy to kill. Fenrir, it's like another god like Mercury. You can kill him all game long. Thor is interesting as well because he has very good damage, but I feel Fenrir outtrades him early game. But once he gets his boots online and Jotuns, Thor can start killing Fenrir pretty easily because Thor is passive and just how much damage he does with his hammer and everything. Alright, let's get into warriors. So this is where Fenrir shines the most, I feel, is against other warriors. He does very well against Vamana because Vamana has a sliding ability with clear the path, and you follow him on brutalize. And Vamana has no way to peel for himself or for his teammates with his 1 because you can't get knocked up or knocked back when you're using your brutalize. Going into that, he's amazing against Tyr. Tyr's fearless in his blue and his red stance. You follow him, so very, very good. The only way he could break it is if he uses his ult, and you can just jump right after him when he ults. And here's the main reason why I started playing Fenrir is because Wukong. Because he was so strong, very OP during the warrior meta. So he had a knock-up on his 2 during the warrior meta, which is now his slow. And his 1 did a lot of damage, and his 3 did a little bit more damage too, I'm pretty sure. So the reason he's so good against Wukong is because he's able to kill him in lane pre-5 very easily, and once you hit 5, you could ult him, and he won't be able to get his somersault cloud off. So that's why he's very strong. And your brutalize also follows his 3rd transformation, which is the bird. So it's very easy to stick onto him. He's good against Chalk because if Chalk throws his abilities onto you and tries to fight you, like Chalk doesn't have enough damage to burst you because you're going to be building sovereignty as a support. So it's very easy to kill him because most Chalks like to go against mages in the solo, so he probably won't have a lot of armor when you see him. And if he does, that's when you have to think about when you're picking Fenrir in the picking stages. You're going to be like, well, we have a mage on our team, and they have a Chalk, so they're going to be building more magic defense, and if Chalk's building more magic defense, I can kill him very easily. And that's what you always have to be thinking about when you're playing Fenrir. Guan Yu, you could stun him out of his Talu Assault with your jump, and you also follow him on Warrior's Will, and you follow him on the cavalry charge, but when you follow him, the last hit of the horse stuns you, so you have to just keep that in mind. He's also getting a Turk. You follow him on the driving strike, but if he driving strikes you, he'll push you, but he has to 180 driving strike you when you're brutalizing, or he'll miss you with his driving strike. He's good against Odin because when Odin pops his Ring of Spears, you can get out with your 3. So a lot of people won't expect that, especially newer people and people who aren't familiar with Fenrir. So if you just brutalize out of his Ring of Spears, you might bait some other ultimates, and they'll be like, oh my god, Fenrir's trapped. His jumps down, ultimate him, and then Odin ults him, and then you just 3 out, and then they're like, what just happened? Osiris is pretty interesting. His 3 stops damage done, and his passive also reduces damage. So You just have to be careful when fighting Osiris. I feel like in the early game, it'll be okay, but around level 5, he could fight back and probably kill you with his ultimate if he lands it. But if it's kind of like an outplay situation again with like the Neja. Alright, go down to Guardians. So, Ares wrecks Fenrir in a perfect world, but you have to be very good at Ares. From experience, I played against Ares trying to counterpick my Fenrir, and no one is able to play it right. You pretty much you can wait for a chain. You can just have your hunter out clear them, and then the Ares sitting there waiting for you to jump, and they'll do nothing, and they'll just be waiting to chain you when you jump in, and you can just outplay them. Ares in a perfect world should beat Fenrir because Shackles stops his 1 and his 3. Any cripple just destroys Fenrir. Athena's taunt does stop Fenrir's brutalize, but you're gonna get 2 hits off before the taunts you because of casting time. And Fenrir's was very strong against Athena because his brutalize follows her preemptive strike. Bacchus is meh. He is a belly flop to get away from the brutalize and can also stun you off of it. So Bacchus is very good against Fenrir. Cabrakan is decent against Fenrir. He has 2 stuns to stun you off him with his 1 and 2. So Fenrir and Cabrakan. I don't really have enough experience to give you an honest opinion. Geb is bad against Fenrir in lane, but once you hit level 5 and once you're fighting like mid game team fights, his Stone Shield is going to cleanse his ultimate, so Geb's a huge counter to Fenrir. So I don't like picking Fenrir into Geb, like, ever. Hades you don't really see often. Fenrir does good. You just wait for the jump. Same thing with, like, Bastet Baka. Kumba, Fenrir does well against Kumba because Kumba really doesn't have enough damage to fight back. With Fenrir, this takes way too long to charge up, and if you ever brutalize him while he's doing this, he's not going to be able to yawn. So if you catch him in this with your 3, you're going to probably kill Kumba in lane and get his passive and just kill him again. Sobek's Tail Whip doesn't peel you off because you're immune to knockbacks when you're brutalizing. So Fenrir does very well against Sobek, and then going back to peeling off, you have to 180 pluck or you'll miss. Against Sylvanas, it's interesting because his alt doesn't knock you up because you're immune to that, and you could also jump and 3 out of this route because it's not a cripple. You have to win the early game. You can't let Sylvanas get levels on you and let his Wisp scale up to out heal your damage. But if you stay on par with him or ahead of him, Fenrir should do pretty well. Ymir is also interesting too. Like in a perfect world, he should beat Fenrir, but if you just wait for him to freeze the wave, or he misses freeze, or he freezes your hunter in lane, you can kill him. Alright, we're going to mages now. Ao Kuang I don't have enough experience with, so I'm not going to go over him. Fenrir does amazing against Agni because of the Path of Flames. You follow him when he dashes, and then they'll try to stun you, but you'll get 3 or maybe even all your brutalize hits off by the time he stuns you and dashes. And his dash will be down, so it's very easy to kill Agni. Anubis, you could stun him out of his 1. Not going to go too much into him. Against Afro, he's pretty good. The kiss stops your brutalize, but you have to like 180 kiss, so it's kind of hard to hit. And then back off and doves just do a ton of damage. He's decent. Once you get into more of the mid game team fights, Afro's probably going to start beating him because he could peel off, and the heal and the damage will kill you. Chang'e, if another, like, going back with Chalk, if you see them building a lot of magic resist, or if they're building just damage, he's going to be good against Chang'e. But if she goes breastplate because your solo laner is physical, he's not going to be that good. Chronos has a stun, and his ult is very interesting, so Fenrir is not the best against Chronos. Freya's more in the hunter role. I'm going to go over hunters next. Fenrir does pretty good against Freya in the early game, you just have to juke the banish, but more towards the late game, you just start getting crushed. This is the best god for Fenrir to fight against, because the crushing wave, you follow it, and they have to 180 crushing wave to hit you when you're brutalizing, or it just misses. And when they're crushing wave, you follow them with your brutalizing, you still apply damage to them. So it's Hebo's #1 counter, and you also can't get knocked up by the water spout when you're brutalizing. So there's no way for Hebo to peel for himself against Fenrir. Against Hell, same thing goes. Like if they're building breastplate, they're just gonna be able to kill you. Same thing with Ra too when we get to Ra. Isis, you just have to wait. Isis is not the best matchups because she has her Spirit Ball and her Dispel Magic. You're gonna get 1 or 2 hits of Brutalize off when she Dispels Magic, and maybe 1 or 2 when she Spirit Balls. But if you're good enough, you could jump and stop her Wind Gust. So I would say Fenrir is decent against Isis. More in the late game, Isis is going to do very well against Fenrir. Against Janus, Fenrir does amazing because Janus doesn't really have any way to get out besides his portal. Like, no great way to get out. So if you're just jumping onto him and he's not portaling himself right away, you're getting a lot of damage off. At least 1 brutalize or 2 brutalize ticks with the jump damage and the auto attack damage. Kukulkan's not really in the meta right now, but he's decent against Kukulkan. Pretty much, if Kukulkan's fed, he's going to kill you with his ult plus tornadoes. That's pretty much all you could say. Don't have enough experience with Nox, so I'm not going to go over Nox. Nuwa, Fenrir is bad against Nuwa because the fog cancels out his brutalize, and you could also get stunned out of your brutalize with clay soldiers, and his ult also gets you out of brutalize. So don't pick Fenrir against Nuwa. Poseidon's interesting. I kind of like picking Fenrir against Poseidon, but it's very hard to because the Whirlpool just stops your brutalize and your Kraken. And if he Krakens you, you just die. So it's like another interesting thing with like Ares and Ymir. I feel like Fenrir's okay against this guy, but in perfect world, this guy should destroy Fenrir. But like when you're in the heat of the game, like the Poseidon's not gonna always be paying attention to you, so I could see Fenrir being able to get away with killing Poseidon pretty easily. Going back with the breastplate statement, you just have to watch what the Ra is building or what the Changa's building, and then you can make your decision if Fenrir is gonna be good or not. You just have to have the right gods in the solo lane. Like that's what you have to be looking for when you're playing ranked. Like I'm just gonna say it again. If you're playing against a Ra and they're going against like a Vamana, they might build some type of armor to stop the Vamana's damage. That would make Fenrir not good against Ra. But if they're playing a Ra and you have a Chang'e on your team, the Ra's probably not gonna go armor, so that'll make Fenrir good in the mid game against Ra. Scylla's another interesting one. In a perfect world, Scylla should be pretty good against Fenrir, but she's not going to be in the heat of a team fight. She's going to be sentineling away, and if you jump on her and then you brutalize her, and if you try to use her Sikkim to catch somebody in the beginning of the fight, she's not going to be able to peel for herself. So it's just like the presence of Fenrir might make her save her Sikkim too. So that's another good thing, like just the presence. Or if they're not paying attention enough, you're just going to kill him if she doesn't have this up. Vulcan's interesting too because his Magma Bomb peels you really easily with your Brutalize. But once you get your Magi's Blessing, you can kill Vulcan pretty easily unless he kills you first with his Earthshaker and Backfire. Zeus is also really interesting because you don't really see him in the meta that much right now, but his 2 gives him a lot of protections, and if he goes breastplate, you're never gonna kill him late game. But if he doesn't go any armor, you're gonna stomp on him with your jump and brutalize. Zhang is another interesting case because his passive gives tons of protections, so 40 physical prot, that's a lot. So if he doesn't have stacks, you're gonna do a ton of damage to him, and also like, the Book of Demons does stun your Brutalize off, but it has a cast time and it has to go around, so you get 2 hits of Brutalize off before this goes off. So you just have to keep that in mind. For, like, the majority of CC, they have cast times, and the Brutalize is going to go off. It hits pretty quick, so while they're casting it, or while they're if you hit them while they're on a global with brutalize, they have to wait for the global. So you'll hit one time with the global, then you'll hit again as they cast the spell, and then during the cast time of the spell, you'll maybe even hit again. So you just have to keep that in mind. Like if they use a spell and you brutalize, they have to wait for their global. So you're gonna automatically get one or two hits that you brutalize off on most people if you do it during a global. Alright, last but not least, this is probably the most important because this is what you're going to be laying against and trying to kill. AMC, very easy to kill for Fenrir. No jump. The only way he can peel for himself is his ult, and that's at level 5. And if they try to fight Fenrir at level 5, you're just going to get chomped, and then your hunter is going to destroy them. Honor is interesting. You have to, it's another outplay kind of thing, like Nejagan going back. If you jump his jump and then impale him into the wall, you can kill him. Apollo's like another thing like Vulcan. The Serenade or the Mez will stop your brutalize, but once you have Magi's, this god's pretty easy to kill because he has the moves, it's a sliding ability, you follow him. Also, you could outplay Apollo. I'll go back to that. Like, there's a couple things that you could do with your ult, which people don't think about, is if you jump and then you ult right after, because they might mez after they come out of the sun, you predict the mez, and then you CC immunity because you have your ult, and then you can pick them up, do the damage, right click, and then brutalize, and then they'll try to slide away, and you'll follow them, and it's just a crazy amount of burst damage. Artemis is another interesting one. If the Artemis is really good with her traps, she'll be able to stop a lot of your brutalized damage, and it's very annoying. But same thing like I was talking about with cast times, like you'll get at least one or two hits of brutalize off, and she also has to be very accurate with her traps. Fenrir crushes Cupid, no doubt about it. Once Cupid hits 5, he could kind of peel for himself, but until then, he's pretty much dead. No matter what. Neath, Fenrir does very well against because you just bait the backflip with your jump, and then you start running towards where she backflipped, and then you could brutalize because the brutalized range is pretty long. Rama is interesting because he has a rolling ability, so you'll follow him on the roll, but once he shoots you, it's a cripple, so it'll stop your brutalize. So it's just another thing with like cast times. You'll follow him, so you'll have gap close already without even trying, and then he'll cripple you, but by the time he cripples you, you'll probably get 2 hits of your brutalize off. Going into Uller, he's probably going to be shooting the wave with his bow stance, and if you jump onto him and then brutalize, he has to do the cast time for the stance change, and then he also has to do the cast time for the axe. So you'll probably get 3 or 4 hits of brutalize off, and from experience, Fenrir does very, very well against Uller. People think, oh, I'm going to pick Uller because I'm just going to axe him off when he brutalizes. Well, if you're going to do that in lane, have fun doing all those cast times and just to get an axe off, and you're not even jumping away, so you're probably almost dead from the brutalize, and then your hunter is also shooting him. So if you're playing Uller against Fenrir, just keep that in mind. And then same thing with Xbalanque. No really anything, include like the ult maybe like can stun him off, but like there's nothing Xbalanque can do against Fenrir. You follow him on the Rising Jaguar, that's his dash because it's a sliding ability. So yeah. Alright, that will conclude the first part of the guide, matchups. This is a Roar from Fat Chunks. Thanks for watching.